Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Unrestricted Sports. Today, we are bringing our NFL news, and we have a pretty packed show for today. So, to start off, the Jamal Adams trade finally happened with the Seahawks. The Jets are getting a first-rounder next year. They're getting next year's third-rounder, and they're also getting 2022's first-round draft pick from the Seahawks.
And a safety. And they're getting one of the Seahawks safeties.
Yes. And on top of that, the Seahawks are getting I believe it's a fourth rounder from next year.
Yep.
So it's a pretty heavy investment. I'm not going to lie. Personally, I don't think it's a good idea to invest that much into a single player on the defense. I mean, I get what they're trying to go for here. They're trying to rebuild that Legion of Boom, trying to build a really strong defense, and I get that because they have a pretty tight division and they have to take some risks. But they're sacrificing their future in order to do it. Getting rid of 2 first-rounders and then also a third, I mean, those are some pretty high draft picks. I mean, third-rounder is still up there. There's a lot of good players who want a third round. And, of course, 2 first-rounders. I mean, giving up back-to-back first-rounders in back-to-back years, we've seen how that plays out for teams, and it rarely plays out well. The Bears didn't play out well. We saw I'm blanking now, but we saw another team do that, and it hasn't worked out too well. Maybe no one will remember that team. If not, just know that there's another team that traded away 2 first-rounders. The Rams. It was the Rams. They've traded away a lot of their first-rounders as well. And so they're kind of in a bad spot here, I think, in the future. I get what they're trying to do in the short term, but, I mean, the NFL is – when you want to build a dynasty, you don't build it short term. You build it for the long term. So I don't think this is a good move for the Seahawks. For the Jets, this is really good to acquire all those picks.
Yeah, there's 2 problems that I see with this trade. Besides that, I love the trade. I think without thinking of these 2 problems that I'll mention in just a second, I think this trade is really beneficial to the Seahawks and super beneficial to the Jets. I'll talk about the Seahawks because that's quicker. Much more competitive division, a team that's actually contending. So now that you have Jamal Adams and Bobby Wagner, you have 2 very powerful hitting defensive players, and that's a super, super scary secondary. Now for the Jets, I think figuring out the Jamal Adams situation was much more important than figuring out the Adam Gase situation, purely for Sam Darnold's development. I don't think having a third head coach for Sam Darnold would be good for him.
But the biggest question is, does your quarterback get along with the head coach? And Sam Darnold seems to get along with Adam Gase pretty well. So you don't mess with that. The most important person on the field is the quarterback. You don't mess with that chemistry between him and his head coach.
Right. So here's my 2 problems with this trade. Is one, like you've mentioned, the 2 first-rounders. It rarely works out. You mentioned the Bears. I don't think it worked. I think it worked out in the Khalil Mack instance. I don't think it worked out in the Jay Cutler instance with the Broncos.
I was more specifically referencing the Mitchell Trubisky instance.
Oh, well, we didn't give up a first-rounder for Mitch. We gave up our first-round pick, but we swapped first-round picks.
Yeah, but then I think didn't you guys gave up something in the future though?
It was the Khalil Mack. We gave up like a 4th rounder or something. Either way, I don't think the Khalil Mack trade, which was 2 first-rounders, really mattered. I think the Jay Cutler one was more harmful.
But I will 100% say Khalil Mack is way better than Jamal Adams, and because the Khalil Mack trade, in my opinion, barely worked out for the Bears. So that should tell you that this is not a good move by the Seahawks to give away 2 first-rounders.
Here's my other problem. The Seahawks, I don't know what their cap situation is like, but I can't imagine that with everybody on their team that they're going to be able to afford Jamal Adams after this season. So I'm scared that this is just a 1-year rental.
If this
it might be 2. It might be 2, actually. I forget.
But either way, 1-year rental or 2-year rental, either way, it's a terrible deal because it puts the Seahawks in a terrible situation.
The Seahawks need to get at least 4 or 5 years out of Jamal Adams, and hopefully a Super Bowl appearance. Because if it doesn't, you're losing your future.
Well, they could have had 2 first-round rookies in the next 2 years who they would have under contract for 4 and 5 years respectively. I mean, think about that. That's a pretty you could get a lot more years out of someone who's a lot cheaper, and also just pointing this out here. not trading away your picks. You're using them. You get to choose. So I don't know. We'll see how it works out. It's an interesting trade, and obviously that relationship with Jamal Adams and the Jets was not going to solve itself, especially after some of the things that he said about Adam Gase. Regardless of what you think of him, the most important relationship on a team is between the head coach and the quarterback, not the head coach and a disgruntled defensive player. But so moving on, Todd Gurley is considering sitting out the 2020 season due to coronavirus concerns. Now, we've talked about this in the past, and when you think about why Gurley's doing this, think about it. Who are the guys who are being the most vocal about not wanting to play a full season this year, or saying that it doesn't seem possible, that the NFL isn't doing enough to be safe, which, first of all, the NFL has laid out a pretty good plan, I think. They've laid out a pretty solid plan, daily testing. They've instituted a set of rules for what players aren't allowed to do when they're off the field. I mean, they've taken this to the next level, okay? They have a pretty solid plan. So for after the NFL announces all these new rules and all these safety precautions, and I think most of them are pretty good, with the exception of the jersey swap one, Gurley says that it's still not safe enough for him.
Gurley wants he just wants there to be a more clear-cut plan that's well known for the players.
The NFL has laid it out pretty clearly. The NFL has said daily testing. You aren't allowed to be partying or eating out at restaurants with more than 25% capacity. Like they have a pretty detailed list. The main reason that these guys who get injured a lot and only play half a season normally anyway are saying all this is because they would benefit from playing half a season. Guys like J.J. Watt, he's been pretty vocal. He gets hurt a lot. Todd Gurley, he has an arthritic knee. He could benefit from playing less. These guys who get hurt a lot would benefit from having a better season because they wouldn't be taking as many reps.
Yeah, so direct quotes here from Todd Gurley. He says that it's not really structured right, to be honest. There's not really a proper plan in place that he's comfortable with. Second quote, a guy like me, I don't have a wife or kids. You have to look at guys on the other side who have pregnant wives, kids, and a wife to go home to every single day. And thirdly, I just feel like we need to come up with something a lot better than what we've been given. He's referring to players complaining here, and that the NFL has just given them pretty last-minute answers based off of common or recent complaints, especially over Twitter.
Really. So this is everything that Gurley said. Now think about this. He's already said, I don't have a wife, I don't have kids, I have no reason to be concerned. And he's claiming that all these other players are complaining about it. But then why aren't we hearing from them? We're hearing from you. So just to get a better picture here, you're saying that there's people complaining, but if that was the case, NFL players are pretty vocal when they think there's something wrong. And to say that the NFL doesn't have a good plan, that's shit. That's a complete lie. Anyone who's read the plan knows that it's as good as any plan out there for continuing the season. Okay. So why is Gurley concerned? He's already said he's not at risk. He doesn't have a wife or kids to worry about. And he's claiming that other people are complaining. Well, we would hear from those people then. So why is Gurley complaining? Because he would benefit from having a shorter season. He's making an issue out of it because he knows that he would benefit. Listen, if this was a guy who had underlying health concern, like blood clots, like the center for the Patriots, or he had a wife or kids that he was concerned about, okay, I see that. Go ahead. You can sit out the season. I don't have any problem with that. But a guy who has consistent health issues, not related to coronavirus, but like with his knee, who would benefit from having a shorter season, being the only one to complain, but saying, well, I'm doing it for the other people who are complaining. NFL players have never been shy about complaining when they think that something is wrong in the deal. And the NFL players just agreed to a deal. Almost pretty strong support for it as well, I might add. So why is he complaining? Because he would benefit. Listen, whatever you think about coronavirus, because there's people who have all different opinions on it, Gurley is not at risk. And the only reason he's complaining is because there's personal benefit for him, which I think is personally irresponsible. Because there are guys out there who might have health risks who now are going to get clumped in with Gurley because everyone sees through this. Gurley gets hurt a lot. / he would benefit from playing less reps. So that's just how I see it. And it kind of hurts everyone else who has to leave for legitimate reasons. Moving on, though. a Chiefs guard. What's his name, Nolan?
Laurent Duvernay Tardif.
So he announced that he was going to be sitting out. He's the first person to officially announce that he's sitting out. And this is where it gets really upsetting for me with how Gurley's doing things and how he's doing things. He's leaving the NFL not because he has a health risk or any of these other things. It's because he is actually in the process of becoming a doctor. And he has proper certifications to actually go into hospitals and help treat people with coronavirus. He is giving up $5.5 million this year and only making $150K. I mean, still a lot of money, obviously, no doubt there. But he's giving up $5.5 million for this year to go help other people, which I think is a great thing. Mad respect for that. That's a hard thing to put $5.5 million on the table and say, you know what, I'm going to go help people and get paid basically nothing for it. Especially when you're on a championship caliber team too. So I have really good respect for that. I feel like I had to throw that in here with the other coronavirus news just because it's kind of relevant. And kudos to him because that's a dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, I think this is probably I'm thinking that it's going to be one of very few people to opt out.
Yeah, there are not going to be many people opting out.
I think the only other opt-out scenarios you're going to get are, people like Todd Gurley's situation, or
I don't think Gurley's going to sit out. I think
I don't either.
I think he was just trying to angle the situation to where he would benefit. And now that that's passed, he's going to play anyway because that's just how it is.
Long story short, I can't imagine many people sit out.
Yeah. So up next we have the let's see here. Oh, I'm actually pretty happy about this. Alex Smith a couple days ago was officially ruled to be able to play this upcoming season. He's been medically cleared. Obviously, if you aren't aware of the story, I don't know how long you've been a football fan, but Alex Smith, if you remember, had a terrible leg injury when he was playing for the Washington Redskins, the circumstances of which have recently been revealed, and that's kind of a weird situation too. And it was a bad enough injury that it could have potentially killed him. So obviously, it's a big deal that he's able to continue playing football and that he's potentially looking at a return. He's obviously hesitant to do that because doctors have warned him about, if this happens again, you might have severe problems. So, but the fact that he's, better after that terrible injury, I mean, I'm glad for him. He was always a solid QB in my opinion. He was never one of the elite guys, but he was a slightly above average quarterback who could win you games. And I think that he is a little underrated because of that, because also he was taken over Aaron Rodgers as the first overall pick. So obviously that put more pressure on him too, and I don't think he should have been taken there. And I think that kind of derailed his career a little bit in that sense because there was so much expectation since he was his first overall pick. And so I'm happy for him. I'm glad that he's better now. I'm glad that he's even potentially able to play. And even if he can't play as a starter anymore, being a backup might be a good role for him. I'm not sure what his status is after 2 years away from the game. But I do know for a fact that he has been throwing the football around a bit, so his arm strength is still there. It's just a matter of his maneuverability in the pocket and everything like that, and his willingness to potentially get hurt again. So,
unfortunately, I don't think he's really going to get another shot in the NFL. I think he's still under contract with the Redskins until 2022. But I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty sure the Redskins can opt out of his contract.
You mean the Washington football team?
Yes. The Washington football team can opt out of his contract, and majority of his contract would just be dead cap at that point. So they'd save about $11 million off of him. But yeah, it's good to see that he at least recovered.
I obviously having from there. So up next we have, let's see here, Dalvin Cook. We talked about him a little bit earlier this year during the offseason of whether or not he would get a contract extension or not, whether or not he thought he should get one, or without a new contract, I should say. He's still under contract, obviously. And he is officially entering training camp without a new contract. I haven't heard anything about him potentially sitting out. So that could be an interesting situation where he's going to be potentially very good this year because he's playing for a contract, which I think that he at least deserved a minor extension. Maybe not the biggest for a running back, but he definitely deserved a contract extension after his year last year. But I think that that's an interesting scenario down there, or I guess I should say up there in Minnesota. And I'm interested to see how it plays out, because obviously Dalvin Cook is a really good running back, and he really dominated last year in some of the games he played in.
It's a good move for the Vikings. If they can somehow get Dalvin Cook to play another season without a contract, that's huge, because if he doesn't have a good season, they can pay him less. Unfortunately, if Dalvin Cook has a good season, I would imagine they'd have to pay him more. So it's a gamble.
It is a risky move by them.
But I think it's worth. I think the Vikings are in win now, obviously, and without Cook, they're not in that mode anymore. So I think no matter what the future is with Dalvin Cook, having him this year is huge, whether it's on a new contract or not.
Yeah. Obviously, like you said, that could rebound pretty badly on them, because we have seen scenarios where running backs go off in years where they aren't given a contract, and they're entering a year where they need to make those stats to make those contracts possible for them and going into next year. So the Vikings could end up paying more than if they just simply extended them this offseason.
Yeah.
And then lastly, Martavis Bryant has been reinstated by the league.
No. I think he's waiting upon it.
Oh, he's waiting upon it? Okay.
Yeah, he hasn't reapplied for it yet, but there are reports that he's planning on it.
Yeah, so interesting situation
eligible
there. Obviously, interesting situation there. The NFL is obviously dealing with a lot of these sort of cases right now. I think more notably, AB is being talked to about this right now. But obviously, Martavis Bryant waiting for his own reinstatement is interesting in itself. And I do believe he should be reinstated at some point. I think the league is probably willing to reinstate him at this point. It has been quite a while since he was initially taken out of the league, if you know.
Yeah. One thing, actually, I mean, obviously, before I just gloss over Martavis Bryant like this, I think Martavis Bryant he's a relatively young receiver still. He's only 28. He kind of reminds me of like a Des Bryant kind of situation, where he was one of those contributing guys on a team that did relatively well and then just kind of fell out of the league. Obviously for different reasons than Des Bryant, but nonetheless fell out of the league. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets picked up or even reinstated. But quickly, I want to circle back to the Jamal Adams trade, and something that was relatively kind of blew up over Twitter is the Le'Veon Bell tweets. And what he has said. I think I'll read his tweet. People do all the hooting and hollering to get you brought in just to leave. Like people weird. The internet got these dudes doing whatever for attention, even when they tell you they don't believe themselves.
Okay, so let me start off.
Yeah.
Because this is something that absolutely infuriates me about Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon, do you remember when you sat out a whole season and posted videos of yourself riding jet skis while, James Conner came in and took your job, and then you got paid less than what the Steelers offered you when you went to the Jets? Yeah, I think we all remember that. So why are you commenting on someone else getting out of a situation that they don't want to be in? Because when you left for money. Jamal Adams left because he has a legitimate problem with the culture. And he also wanted money. But there's also a clear issue with the culture that's going on here as well. So of all people to be talking about this, first of all, NFL, you don't talk about other people's money. Second of all the people to do it, Le'Veon Bell, are you kidding me? Dude, do you have the self-awareness of like a snail? Come on, man. Come on.
He had mentioned, or after his tweets, Jamal Adams, I believe, tweeted back at him that he will see him in later on in the season. The Seahawks and Jets happen to play each other mid-December, so it's actually going to be relatively interesting.
Le'Veon's going to rush for like 50 yards. Le'Veon's going to rush for like 50 yards and average 2 a carry, so let's see how that goes for him. But with all that being said, guys, that is it for today's episode. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help out the video. We had a lot of news today to cover, so this is a slightly longer video, so this does help out the channel a lot. So like I said, Like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.